Tēnā koutou katoa. Ngā mihi nui kia koutou tēnā koutou. My experience, ko kaupias taku ingoa, ko ngā pui aho, ko te mahurihuri taku hapu. So that is my hapu, my iwi. I'm just one iwi, one hapu. Doesn't happen very often. The reason for that is that I was born here in Palmerston North, and I am the first to be born outside of my my hapu, outside of, so my mum was part of that whole, my grandfather was born in the bush. My father was literally born in the bush, my grandfather. My mother was the first to be born in a hospital, and I am the first to be born outside of the iwi area. I don't call it all Māori, and there's a history. With that in mind, my father is Pākehā. He is white Pākehā, and he is white Pākehā through and through. And for him, voting was important, really important. His vote was, he had to vote. If he didn't vote, somebody else would steal his vote. That kind of caught it on, you know. And if anybody in the whānau, in the family, voted different to him, then they were taking his vote away as well. So we all had to vote the same. So voting was important, and voting was, so I voted when I was able to. And I think my understanding is that that's the most important vote, is that first vote. So my upbringing, in that sense, from my Pākehā father, was that voting was important, and he would have been taught that from his Pākehā father, and so on and so forth. That's our chance to have a say in government. Once every 3 years, we at least have that chance. So that was that Pākehā bringing through that thought. So I have voted. I am also involved, and I am also in the last election, in the last role change, I changed from the general role to the Māori role, for a reason that's unusual, and that is that there is a candidate on the Māori role who has stood for many years, who I admire and who I work with, and I wanted to vote for him. So that's why I changed from the general role to the Māori role. Not for numbers, not for, although I understand that's important, but I wanted to tautoko my my Māori friend, who I've got a lot of respect for. So that is, I suppose, a little bit about me and my voting story, attitudes. Here's the other thing though, you see, I understand Te Amo. I totally understand Te Amo. I understand everybody in here, because I am ngā pui also. You know, I stand in two worlds. And I see my whānau, and I see what happens to my Māori whānau. And why would anybody engage in a system that won't engage with them, or when they try to engage, it just doesn't listen? So I was brought up Pākehā, but I am also ngā pui, and so that is my voting history, is also my life. Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Tēnā tātai, ngā malora lai, talofa. ko ai tēnei, ko Pini Pautu, me Ngāti Manipoto, Ngāti Te Waiora, Ngāti Te Waimate, e tū ana kai muri a koutou. E hi au te mihi atu ki a koe, kia ora na, he mihi atu ki a koe te anau, mo tō mihi me tō karanga ki a mātou, ko tau mai, mo te aha, ki te whakatako ko mātou whakaro, mo tēnei me te pōte. Kai atu ki a koutou o te komehana, ko tau mai a tinana, ki te whakako, ki te kānohi, ki te kānohi nā whakaro, o tātou tau mai ki konei. Kia ora, my name is Penny Pautu. I am an outsider from Palmerston North. I've been living here for 40 years, which doesn't make me either a Hibernian or a Palmerstonian in the sense that I am actually Ngāti Manipoto. And I have to acknowledge that we, as in an urban environment, live in an unusual scenario. Some of you are from here, and some of you, like me, have come from other places and have been made our homes, raised our families, and worked here, or not worked here, as the case may be, for many years. I have actually got a number of comments I'd like to make, but I'm not going to do that at this point. I'll finish our little mihi-mihi, but I do want to acknowledge those of you that are here from the Electoral Commission, including our local representative, for being here. I think turning up face-to-face gives someone like me, at least, and it sounds like everyone else, the opportunity to express our views and thoughts. I am a voter. In fact, I figured just now I must have voted at least 13 times in my life. An adamant supporter, not of the Westminster electoral system that we are stuck with, but of the system that we're stuck with, of participating and not allowing myself to be excluded from that system. And I have some comments on that which I'd like to make later, but I thank everyone, the rest of us that have arrived, for being here, and you know, respect all of the views that people have expressed. I can, as I said, I have a number of comments and I look forward to so tēnā tātou.
Kia ora
Oh, we don't exclude anyone.
Oh, sorry.
Jumping you, Jumping you, Kari. We won't be jumping you. We won't be jumping Te Rangatira or Te Iwha Te Whare.
Tēnā tōtou katoa, Coalition, right, whānau, Maiaho, Holsopple, Pennsylvania. Thank you very much for coming out tonight, and I'm also quite humbled by stories we've heard tonight and what you're sharing. And I'd also like to acknowledge Veronica Tafai, who during the 2017 general election raised and put voice to some areas where we didn't do such a good job. And in many ways, this hui and the huis that we've had across the country are coming from that place. And one of the things that that she said that that resonated with me. We met and had a long conversation about voting and the electoral system. Is that that the system is not your system, and there are ways that we can improve it that we cannot even see, and that there is a need to hear and listen about these stories in order to think about the ways that we can improve our service. And that's what we're here tonight to do. So, thank you, Nicole.
Kia ora whānau.
Yeah.
Sorry for jumping the queue.
That's all right.
I was just like, I was listening to all these people and I was, yeah, okay.
Should know intersectional
Yeah.
feminism, bro.
Probably just echoing the same things that everyone else has said. I mean, there is a lot of problems with the system, and I mean, I know you guys deal with the national stuff as well, but you know, folks don't see it as a separate thing. You know, like what happens in the local body elections is different from what happens in the national body election, which is different, which happens with the regional council sort of stuff. It's all seen as part of the same sorts of things, and so when things are not in a way which are very welcoming for us, that's not good. And an example is the recent Māori Walks thing that we had, which you probably know about as well. It's basically set up systemically to be biased against Māori about our participation in local body politics. You guys probably know the way that it works. You know, the council can call for a rural ward. Don't worry about it. They can call for that and that can happen. But if it's Māoris, it goes to a vote. And of course, because we're in a minority, it never happens. You know, and so when we see the rest of Palmerston North or the rest of the Manawatu go, you know what, Māori participation, forget it. I mean, that does not encourage participation in the system. I know you guys can't control that, but it definitely fuels the perception that this system is not there for us. And I think it kind of, there's a whole lot of other things that lie underneath it as well. So, for example, in that whole push for the Māori wards, for example, you know, we had Hobson's kids showing up here as well, saying all this stuff about Māoris, you know, like completely racist stuff. And then you know, you get Māori families, they'll turn the TV on whenever there's a Māori issue, they'll rashes on them. You know what I'm saying? It kind of oozes out on the TV and the radio, you know, about how biased and prejudiced New Zealand is against Māori. So when you see that, why would you want to participate? You know what I mean? Why would you want to participate in a system which is actually set up to be so denigrating of us? Having said that, I participate. A little bit of university education goes a long way, I have found. And the reason that I participate is, you know, when I voted, it's just taken 10 minutes of my life with that. You just walk down there, that's it, forget about it. You know, after that, you know, in my earlier years, and that's why I tell folks, it's like, you know, it doesn't really take that much out of your life, you know, and it doesn't take that much out of your life to actually to sort of participate. But you know, those are those other things that are barriers to our participation. You know, they're systemic, they're societal issues which are in many ways based on, I don't know, historical discrimination against Māori people. Yeah. Contemporary discrimination just didn't end.
We were talking right at the beginning. I'm a Fielding boy, so I was born and bred in Fielding. Went to Fielding Ag, and at the end of my schooling, didn't know what I was going to do, and through a neighbour I got a job in the courthouse. And back then, when I worked in the courthouse, courts administered the elections. So my family, my background, my dad went over to the war and he came back, and we didn't have a lot of money, we didn't have much. Mum and Dad used to argue about who to vote for. In the end they voted Labour. I didn't really have a lot of knowledge about elections, and so when I started in the courthouse, I started to learn about elections, what they meant and how they happened and what we did. So the challenge for me is that every time we go to these little hui, I need to tell a different story. So the story I'm going to tell you about, one of the first things that I learned when we were working on elections, and I've talked about this in the past a little bit, is everybody that was enrolled had their name on a little card, and so we had thousands and thousands of cards that we had to keep in alphabetical order. And when the election came round, we used to get typists in from the post office, and they would set up in the courtroom, and they would take those cards and they would type them up onto a A4 page, like something like this. So they would take and type the name, address, and the occupation of each person, and then when they'd finished each page, they would give that back, and then we had to check that they'd typed it correctly, and we had to make amendments on that page so that it was correct. Those pages then went off to a printer who typeset it, and then printed it and sent it back to us, and then we had to check it again against these cards to make sure it was correct before they produced an electoral roll. So my introduction, so it's a few years ago, it's all different now, but my introduction to elections and election work started out at that basic level, and so that's how I learnt a little bit about elections and then voting. I've worked on election work for many years in different roles, starting at the very basic level, and but my career's been working in courts and justice, and I retired from there, and so I've come back in more recent times, first to help out, but then I could see that there was an opportunity to help make a difference. So I've taken on a more permanent role, and my message to you is I'm here to help. So what I'm trying to do is help make it better. Sure.
Kia ora, Graham.
Kia ora, just before we move through to the next phase, I'll share with you my story. It's never changed, it's constant. I'm the oldest of 13 children. I was brought up at Parikino on the Wanganui River. I lived with my grandparents. And with the benefit of hindsight and thinking back about why I do what I do and the things that are important to me, I believe my grandparents set out to make me want to vote, to participate. I believe that. There was banter in our house, our little whare, during election time. We walked over to the school and the banter went on. They would be saying to me, hey, don't you listen to your kōrero, you tell me who he's going to vote for. And I'd go, he'd say your name, listen, tell me. And we were in the banter, and I'm thinking, what's this voting stuff? We get there, George Parikoa was the teacher, and I only realised of recent times that in those times, Māori, we did not have a secret ballot. We had to walk in, give our name, and we had to tell the voting place manager or whoever the polling person was who we wanted to vote for. And he would, because we weren't clever enough to have a secret ballot and follow the process. And he gave them a secret ballot. I didn't know that. He gave it to all of the people who turned up. And my nanny said, come on, watch me, boy. And she goes, okay, yeah. You don't you tell your kōrero. He comes in. Who did she vote for? I can't tell you. And the banter continued when we were walking home, because we're about a mile from the school. And I remember thinking to myself, I should just stop this banter and tell you both who you voted for. Because you both voted for Auntie. My grandmother, her father was Pararatana. Her mother was Wikitoria Winiata from Aotearoa. And our auntie was Iriaka Ratana, who was the longest serving Māori, Western Māori MP. And they were only ever going to vote for our auntie. They weren't going to vote for anyone else. So, you know, that banter that went on, I think it was contrived. And because I'm the only one in 13 children who's a voter. You know, all my brothers and sisters, they weren't brought up as voters. My dad votes, my mum has always voted, but the children didn't get the experience that I got with my grandparents. And so now I badger them to vote. I make sure they're enrolled. As the oldest in the family, I use that position. And I use it with my nieces and my nephews. Hey, last time, I reckon I voted 87 times. I'm ready for just alright? If you got a problem with her, you can blame me. But the thing is, you know, I grew up and I could not wait to vote. I could not wait to get there. I've wasted one vote, but that's another story. But I've turned out, I lived in Australia for 14 years and I voted there too. And I made it my business to find out who I should vote for. A few times I reckon I was a bit off the radar, but that, you know, you vote for someone, you get them in there and you think, oh, I fucking vote for him. What do I do that for? Give yourself an uppercut. You don't know. Okay, so yeah, that was my, you know, and it's never changed. It's been constant. But I think, you know, I benefited from my nanny and Kuru's foresight, and you know, not because I was, you know, had any other. It was just that experience that my brothers and sisters didn't have, and now I'm their conscience. I'm the one who pokes at them and. You know, they follow me, but you can see the look in the eyes and saying, brother, if you weren't here, I would be just still home in bed. And it's, you know, we're a family of shearers, we're a family of, my brother's working in Australia, biggest shearer contractor in West Australia, and I still get on their face page and I'm annoying them into, you know, and all his workers into enrolling back there. It's like I'm on a bit of a mission, but I still think, you know, one thing, and I want to put it out, and thank you for being, you know, sharing your views, and Te Amo, we are the kaitiaki of the system in New Zealand. That's our job. She's the head kaitiaki for this, and I think that was really, really wise of Veronica to encourage you to sit down and keep talking and listening, because some of the things that we need to be doing to get the system right, to try and align our collective visions around what might happen, will emerge from listening. And I, you know, you guys have put out a take out view, and it is around that system, and we just got to keep talking, because we might crack the system for your mokos or for your children. But sometimes it is not just the system, it requires all of us in a whānau to decide we're going to change this. And you know, interestingly with local body, what people don't realise is how few votes you need to get in. A lot of people do not understand that. You know, only the turnout is really low. If you can get 1,000 people to vote for you, you're a long way, you're quite close. If you could get 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 in Highbury to vote for you, you're in. And I guess that's another thing as we need to help people to understand. And when we start thinking about the next steps, I'd encourage you to think about the system, and because that's going to help us get it to another space. And the views you shared are not. I've heard them lots of times before. They're not new, and I respect them. And you know, some people in my family hold those views, and they just keep very quiet when I'm around. But it is just that. So we're going to take for the next hour. We'll have a kai. We'll try and wrap things up around 8 o'clock. And then we've got a kai coming, so we can have a kai together. And yeah, so it's here. But to start thinking for the next phase, think about the system. Try and help us to understand, because you know you're not isolated views here. There are thousands of people who don't enrol, and we don't know a lot of the reasons behind that. You're one of thousands, because it has 93% of all eligible New Zealanders are enrolled. 7% of so 7% of 3.5 million, isn't it? A lot of people have their views around not being registered or not. And so our part of our job as kaitiaki is to understand where the system pressures is. What do we need to do? Is it a system change? Is there an education? Is there the system, education, candidates, political parties, trying to, we don't know, there's enough, but we do know that the answer is out there, not in here or here. We know that, and that's why we're here. So I'd throw it back to you, Penny, because I think it is a good way to start thinking about 217. We heard some good things from Veronica. We heard that people who come to our voting places get their name. Then even my name, I experience it. Peter Pōtaka is not an easy name for some people to listen to and go and find it. They go looking for Paul Tucker. So I experienced that. But we heard there were some of the basics that our staff were getting wrong. Not knowing there was a Māori role, looking on the name for a general in the general role, and that's less than 101, and we know that, and we're gonna deal with that. But yeah, if there are any other views you've had, because we're always looking for.
I do. Do you want us to answer those questions?
Yeah, you just work through that, and that's great.
Did I kind of say, okay, well, I've just introduced myself. My voting story is that I come from a working class underground coal mining family, from both sides, and I grew up in a community where voting was really, really important, and that's probably because that was part of the kind of Labour government, and I'd say I know, in fact, everyone but one person in the little community I grew up in voted Labour, and one person voted Social Credit because my mother was the election counting person, and she used to have to ring through the results, and we lived in a community with only 42 votes. And every election there were 41 Labour and 1 Social Credit, and we all knew that was LG Roads down the road. So, and I was only there because I was a nosy child. But I grew up in a family that thought that our vote as a working class family could influence the government and would change how the government made decisions, either for the good of working class people or not for the good, in the time when people believed that a Labour government might do that. So my individual voting experience was I was definitely always going to vote and have always voted. I am a strategic voter. I think I'm a strategic voter my entire life, except for once was on the Māori roll. I came to Palmerston North as a student when Palmerston North was not a Labour seat. Traditionally I'm no longer a Labour voter, I'm a Māori Party voter, but I came here and it was under National, so I changed from the Māori roll to the general roll. I voted as a massive student in Palmerston North to convert it to Labour, and then I changed back to Uncle Koro on the Western Māori roll. So I'm a strategic voter, and I think Māori have been strategic voters, those of us that have voted, that thought we could influence that. I have some comments I'm going to make about the 2017 election, and I think we can do that. So there's I've got a whole lot of notes that just spewed out of me while we were sitting here, and one of them was, I am horrified at the number of disallowed votes in the last election, and they were nearly all Māori. Well, a large proportion of the disallowed votes were Māori. That's what I heard on the news and the events following that there were a large number of disallowed Māori votes, and I think anyone that gets their ass off their seats, walks down or drives down to vote, is just really disempowered if their vote's not counted for whatever reasons. And there were lots.
Can I just add to that too? Because we do all our data entry.
Yep.
For all our rural enrolments, for all our student enrolments. And I was going to mention that later. That's probably another reason why Māori are disheartened in votes, because we have to input all these special votes, all the details, everything. And for me as a Māori, it's really disheartening. In 2017, I had to actually stop and get off my seat and go for a walk because I was getting quite emotional. There's a lot of them coming through, and they were going to be sent. We knew they'd be sent a letter afterwards. So we see all of that coming through when we're putting our data entry, and it is quite sad because we know that only one of their votes will count. So that's why with us, especially locally, every registrar, with our community engagement program, that's one of our main goals, is to really engage with our communities, know who they are, educate them, because the voting process is one part, it's the enrolment side that is the guts of it all. If you get that enrolment wrong, if you miss something out, it gets sent back to an elector.
Okay.
You know, sometimes we're going to get that back.
Yeah.
And to explain to them the difference between the Māori roll, electoral roll, is another scenario. So that's why a lot of those votes aren't counted, because they don't understand what that electorate vote is. So that's when it becomes eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Okay, you would have experienced. So, and that happens to, you know, so many people, especially Māori. And that's why, that's our goal, that's my goal too, and the Commission, is to really engage with our whānau and to really educate them and to get them knowing what their enrolment form is. So that takes some of that bearing away for them when they go and vote.
Can you forgive me for jumping all over the place? I'm not in any
No,
logical form.
you just let it go.
Because it's just how my brain spews out. I'm actually a supporter of voting. I don't support the system that we have, but I do think that as we are not yet able to change that we should participate in that. And I believe that Māori absolutely should have a separate representation in government. I think that the ward system is a brilliant example of how we are not able as a minority Indigenous population to be heard. That because we're a minority in our own country, we will never win on a system unless we have a separate representation. And I believe that representation should be at least 50-50, not population based on a treaty-based representation, that we were tangata whenua and we have a right to be heard. The fact that doesn't happen is irrelevant. I want to say that I know of at least one, probably two examples last year where I think people were really cheated from their votes. One of them was two Māori university students at Victoria University wanted to vote for their uncle Howie Tamati and were told at the electoral office that they couldn't vote into Taihauru because they lived at Waikato University, and that they had to vote on the general roll. So both of their votes had to have been disallowed because they were actually registered on the Māori roll into Taihauru. So that was, you know, a scenario. So I'm really supportive of the training being improved in all of the offices where people vote, even though that must seem difficult. But every person in a voting booth has to know there are two electoral rolls, and I think they also have to learn to listen to the people that are asking and explaining what they're voting for. And I think that there's a huge lack of information in our country about civics, that we do not understand how a country works, that no one teaches that, no one explains that. The average person couldn't tell you how many MPs there are in government, let alone how many Māori seats there might be and potential. I don't think anyone says to the Māori community, if we all transferred to the Māori roll and we all enrolled, that we would control government in a much better way. Because proportionally we would be really overrepresented compared to other people, which is why we have hangovers when most people don't even know what that is. But I just think that if you...
Well, we know what a hangover is.
But if you could... Not that hangover. Hangover seats. So if I could say... Yeah, so if we could say to people that actually your vote really does count, that if you don't vote, it can make a difference.
Sorry, what does hangover mean?
Oh, it's just that when there are there's more seats than the proportion of people, but I won't go into that right now. Maybe our rangatira here could explain that. But Māori seats can cause that. When you've got more people voted onto the Māori roll, you've got more Māori MPs than the proportion allows for in the number of that their party might have.
And that's true for the general seats.
And the general seats as well, so you can get that. And I think Māori could put excellent in that way. I think that we need to deliberately target those that are least engaged, which means often those that vote in the Māori seats, particularly interested in the Māori seats, but even just Māori in general, that the way to approach young Māori people, I can't possibly suggest what that might be because I'm not young any longer. It's been a bloody long time since I was young. And that Māori young people and any other young people work in a really different frame of mind. So social media,
Yeah.
You know, all sorts of things in terms of how you communicate.
Apps,
is
creating
really
apps
important.
maybe.
My background, I currently work for whānau order, which is a fantastic policy about empowering whānau. And that includes that we need to be engaged in all parts of the world, and that includes, I think, engagement with political things and how our countries run. But my whole background is in kohanga reo and kura kaupapa Māori, and I found it really frustrating that even though there's lots of resources for Māori information, you can't enrol in Māori. So to say to my 16, 17, 18-year-olds, or the 17-year-olds, because I worked with from babies right through to 18-year-olds, that in a school that doesn't, except in the English language classroom, use any English language resources, those little boys that are in here now cannot enrol in Māori, and they are first language Māori speakers. And that just seems like one missing dummy thing in the system. And equally, when I called in last year, because I'm really keen that kids understand that, to get a map of Te Tai Hauru, I couldn't actually do that. I couldn't buy a map of the electoral system. I couldn't get one offline. I wanted to take one off the wall, take it away, and I couldn't. That annoyed the hell out of me. So,
gave you mine, Penny.
yeah, but you know, just if you're not allowed, that's not just it. I think that all Māori, I think, there's no one kind of Māori. We're not the same. We have really different views. We are different ages, more than two sexes, and different backgrounds, different skills, different political persuasions. So we have to be approached in a variety of ways. There is no one way. You know, I was really impressed with my children's iwi doing their whole online about encouraging all of their iwi to participate and vote, including those overseas, and showing them how to do that. So I do think everyone can have a role in that encouragement of people to vote. I think role modelling, I've trotted my children along with me to vote, including the dog, wearing tino rangatira colours. And she's not allowed in the voting space, okay, but she can be outside with her tino rangatira flags on. And I think that I had some other things here that I also have always felt that if I didn't vote, I couldn't whinge about the government. You know, I vote so I can complain about what they're doing because I didn't like who's there, or they're not doing what I told them to do, or I expected them to do, or they promised that they would do. So if you're not in that system, it's really much harder, I think, to have value if you didn't vote for the current coalition. And trust me, I did not want Winston in that coalition. Then you can't complain about it, because you didn't even try to play the game, you know what I mean? So that's a toughie. And I also want to say that we are in an MMP environment, and I think that we can be really strategic, but that it goes back to we need to understand that system and to say that Māori have a vested interest in that system, because in the future Māori, Pacifica and Asians are going to be much bigger proportions of the voting public.
Yes.
And we do not want to be the majority of the voting public and still leave it to Pākehās to control who the government is.
Aye.
And, you know, we are changing colour, you know, just by mere birth rates. So it's important that we get our skin in the game and that we find methodologies to do that. So that's my kind of, I've probably got some few things that I haven't said, but that's all I can read from my own scribbling at the moment.
Love it.
So thank you.
No, it's okay. I was just sort of thinking what people were saying about, you know, in terms of the system and generally how negative it is, and then maybe an action that the Commission could do is to have a really focused education civics campaign, specifically target at Māori.
Absolutely.
And not only that, that we can't ask teachers to teach what they don't have the resources to teach
that's
them.
right.
And so people would always trot around to the kura with the electoral forms and stuff to encourage us, but certainly not the curriculum that helps you teach how it works easily for a teacher, a classroom, and certainly for immersion, but even I think mainstream, there isn't that. You have to do a whole lot of work to put that together if you're not, because it doesn't come out as a package deal.
Yeah, and like the pictures, because I think, you know, just listening to the bros, they know it, we know it, about how biased the system is against Māori, that actually has to be part of it. Because some of them, you look at this election stuff, it's like, Yeah, no, if you just educated yourself more, because well,
Yeah.
actually, no, it's
No,
actually
it's
a bit
not
more
right.
than that. If the system is pushing you back,
Yeah.
and the media in particular is saying all these things about us, and Hobson's Peak, I'll just mention those guys again, then you have to actually, your education program can't be just about this, it can't be just this kind of thing which is supposed to be for everyone. You've actually got to dig a lot deeper,
Yeah,
to understand the reasons why that people are Māori are disengaged with the system, and that actually has to be part of civics education. Why is it? You know, what is systemic discrimination?
Mm.
You know, why are these? What is the history of colonisation? How has that actually impacted the electoral system, and how has that sort of brought us to the way that we are, way that we are today? And so, tipping a bit of PT or a bit of I don't know, strategy or policy in that direction could do some way of sorting some of these issues out.
Would it be possible that prior to any sort of an election, that people that we there's a, and especially in Highbury, that we could create a space, or we could go to a space, invite our whānaus to come along and use that as an educational platform to get them ready for the election, just to get, first of all, to get them engaged, and it doesn't necessarily have to be here. It could be at Te Aroha Noa, it could be at St Michael's Church, it could be, I mean, in the marae there. So, you know, and or maybe down at the Pacifica Centre, and just to get people engaged in this community, because we're wanting to increase the awareness behind what's available out there, empowering our community to make a decision and to be part of the game. I love it. I also vote strategically, although I'm a passionate red person, yeah, and maybe in these workshops, or we can teach people about how to vote strategically, or bring about awareness in these little, I don't know, incubators, if you will, or hubs. Just a suggestion.
I wonder. Sorry.
I like what Lee said as well, because I found when Jacinda came to the community, the whānau were more engaged and they listened and really got to know a bit more about the system and how it works. And I think that, so I work for Tuakahuia, and I'm a whānau water social worker, and so I run the service for 10 to 24 year olds. So for me, it was getting them enrolled and knowledge building around it as well with our tamariki. And I also have a lot to do with prisoners, so especially with the youth that are incarcerated as well, and they feel left out. You know, we've got over 50% Māori men incarcerated, and they're just left out. You know, and it's a big chunk of Māoridom. You know, so when they're released in that, they just feel, what's the point? You know, they haven't voted all these years, so that's that as well. And getting our iwi more involved. You know, maybe going to the marae and having what Lee said, you know, the education platform.
Right in the heart.
Teaching whānau a bit more
Aye.
about how to vote and the difference between general elections and local elections. They're just small things like that, yeah.
I reckon our names, that's
Yeah.
that's basic, right? That should be sorted. It's 2018.
Yeah.
You know,
Aye.
the commission is that far behind. Might sound like there's a bit of catch up that needs to happen.
So I was just, because a number of things were just mentioned here. I'm wondering in your corridor when you're around the motu. See, I also am a strategic voter. I vote strategically as a Māori voter. And how many of those Māori who do vote strategically?
It's quite a big proportion, eh? We split our votes.
There's
Very split.
Right, yeah.
Very
Absolutely.
strategic.
So we as Māori, those of us who do vote, are very strategic with our votes. The other thing that was talked about was when Jacinda came to town, and she was just totally mobbed and she came to Highbury, and she had a housing. She was going to talk about housing, and that was important, and they managed to get that out there, and there was a huge crowd there, so which was fantastic. But we have an issue at this point in time with our Māori MPs just being so. The areas are just completely crazy. Te Tai Hawaruru, I believe, is the second largest rohi next to South Island.
The Waipōnamu is the whole of the South Island, and part of Wellington is one
and
electorate.
includes Wellington.
Yeah.
I mean,
Wow.
to see
Crazy.
the people that you're voting for, you just, unless you are chasing them around, or to
Can't
actually,
find them, yeah.
the difficulty for that MP to actually see everybody and to, go out and talk to people. They are strategic in who they, and the places they go to as well. I mean, Dame Tariana Tuzia, for example, we hardly ever saw her here in Palmerston North, but she was definitely in Whanganui, she was definitely with Ratana, there were certain places she was very strategic about where she used to turn up, but here in Palmerston North we never saw her. So, and that for Māori, and that seeing the MP, in their rohi, is important, and while their officers, and that's difficult for the MP.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah, it doesn't matter which MP it is, which electorate. Our electorates are huge. So if we're represented by equal representation, we'd have smaller electorates. But yeah, totally agree. The other thing is, I think the Jacinda, sorry I don't want to cut across anyone, but that Jacinda thing last year was unique. We haven't seen that at any other time,
exactly.
because there's a whole Jacinda effect.
Yeah.
Everyone was really excited. Labour did a brilliant job, and so that was, she was literally mobbed. But we haven't actually seen that in any previous election.
True.
With anybody else, it was just, that effect that happened. And we don't normally see it, and I do think that the practicalities of how do you have workshops for people, it's not viable and affordable. Like for, I work for Te Tihi, which is an alliance, part of the alliances, the whānau alliances, it works with Wakahuia. We decided to put on our Facebook page, we did a whole filming thing that was kind of sort of cuzzy bro stuff, and did that, a series of 6 things that was kind of just showing kind of more bro to bro kind of voting pattern, because that's the kind of way we have to use different methodologies, and also the word leadership, that people who are in leadership positions need to be encouraging.
Yep.
And I know at that time of the year I walk around with the enrolment forms in my bag, so you're in trouble if you're standing in a queue beside me and I'm going, hey, you on the roll? There you go, bro. Can't tell you who to vote for, can tell you who I vote for, but you've got to be into to play the game.
That's right.
So you need to be proactive.
Yes.
I got some spare ones if you want some.
Yeah, but I always have, they're always in the boot of my car.
You're actually
Beautiful.
there's a project happening at the moment with reviewing the form, and as easy as it's still quite difficult, and a lot of the tick boxes can be quite confusing. Like I was saying before, if they get it wrong, like even one tick missing, like the residential, it gets sent back to them. So it's just trying to streamline that whole process, which will definitely help.
And we're also introducing a digital enrollment system.
Yes.
So that we can
Young
actually,
kids,
Yes,
so you
apps.
can just do it
Yeah.
online. You don't have to do it in a paper form.
Yeah, on our phones.
Yeah.
Look.
Interestingly, with to a couple of whānau order workers, we struggle to engage in a relationship with Māori whānau order providers. Whereas we had a big thing going with Pacifica Futures, who were the
Well, we tried to engage, did we not?
and we had them. We had a program with them in South Auckland where our registrar worked closely with them and worked with training the navigators to help people to enrol. And they even had they also had a quite a specific outcome they were working for. Number of new enrolments and so on.
Yes.
And yet we tried to go through the same track, but we we couldn't get any traction there.
Well, we definitely were engaged here.
Yeah.
Yes, just like what you said, APN is just doing different ways. Everything, you know. Every
Yeah, people were engaged in different ways, but it seemed we were trying to get in on the ground the way we did with Pacifica Futures. You know, where we worked quite closely, helping to train and fill out forms, and some of them wanted to do it themselves, and others said, no, you come and do it for us, and they set up quite specific outcomes to shoot for, and we thought that was something that I think it's something we can get better at it with more lead-in time to do that. But it's, because a lot of your clients, it's part of that process of healing,
Ours was part of our job is to do that.
And also, you talked earlier about the diversity of contemporary Māori. We're starting to learn more about that in the Commission. I brought in Professor Sir Mason Dury.
He's
maybe. I came from Statistics New Zealand, and we talked a lot about Matatini Māori, that diversity of, and so that it is not about necessarily about a relationship with iwi or runanga. 85% of Māori live in urban areas. That's a fact. And so if we want to connect across the spectrum with all Māori groups, there are people who know they're Māori, they don't know why or how, but they will have a connection with maybe a tamoko. They will have an affinity with going to Kapaka. There are people who come together under sports clubs, and there's all different ways, but one of the things we do know is that Māori are still very whānau oriented. Even when they're disconnected from their tūranga waiwai, they're still whānau connected. And we need to be thinking about that as a way of, and that's why one of the things we tried to promote was encouraging people to engage with their whānau to make a decision about the Māori role or the general role. Now's the time to change. You talk to them.
Oh, sorry, I didn't say that too.
No,
I'm appalled that you don't have the right to change whenever you want to.
Yeah.
I hate that because it's too long. 5 years is really a long period of time for some people to have figured out how it works. Sorry.
Yeah, no, but those are things we're trying to get a better understanding. And I'm really glad you raised that, because it is something we need to be constantly reminded of. We're learning that working with communities, we can't do it. We have to try and get the trust and confidence of the communities, and work with them.
Sorry,
and they're the ones who will give us.
No,
keep
you're
going.
not talking too much. No,
We need to have, I totally agree with you. That's why I think local leadership, and I mean leadership in terms of those that are part of the community and in touch in all of their forms, whether you were talking, social workers or sports coaches or teams or whatever it is, all the diversity that's out there. You also need to figure, I think that the Commission, because we asked for funding and you didn't have the authority to give us funding to make the videos, because we ended up paying one of the actors to do the things that he did because he was relatable and known and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And we didn't have the resources to do it a bit flashier, and we would like to do it so that it was, of a high quality, and we've got better at that now. But
So it's a
we
whole-
would have liked to have contracted as a resourcer to help encourage. We understand entirely the impartiality of whom people should vote for, but whānau order does require people to be participating and engaging in the community and the society that we live in. And and so we wanted to really focus on that, and that's why I'm here. And there is apologies from someone called Jean Takurua, who we set up something called Up To. In the last election, we called our campaign Up To. But what are you up to? I didn't know as an old person what up to. I didn't know what up to was, but I'm informed by every other person under the age of 30 that other people under the age of 30 knew what up to meant. Up with the two. So that's what it was. What are you up to? And we wanted to get them into the election. And that's part of just thinking differently and behaving differently, and how we engaged in doing that. And we did send them down to Parliament to take some videos of what the place was, and try and just get into that. thing a bit more, and so it may be that the people best able to do that are the people in the communities, and yes, you do need some skills and contracting abilities and accountabilities, but that's probably something to look at.
Absolutely, and we'll keep the notes, we're going to keep coming back to you.
In the
But I think
meantime,
that is something that we can.
sorry, Matua. In the meantime, that still doesn't stop us as a community from continuing the conversation, regardless of the lack of resources that may be available. I mean, I know that there are groups in Highbury that meet at each other's houses. There are 50 people jammed into one person's house. Oh my gosh. That's why we desperately need a facility somewhere in Highbury that can bring us all together. But so it's already starting to happen, but I would like it to be there to be at least a dialogue happening between the electoral office and the people in the community. That's all.
Can I ask something? You know, with a lot of these ideas that we have, are you able to make, because it seems to me that some of these issues are legislative, you know, like for example the 5-year thing, probably you can't do anything about it, but are you able to like collate the stuff and make recommendations?
On the MEO, just so that you're aware, the after every general election there is a report that the Commission puts out about things that we would like to see changed and legislation that we would like to see. And we have recommended that people can actually exercise the Maori electoral option more often. So that's in our report, and it's online. And there is a select committee inquiry that occurs around the GE, and that is going to be kicking off very soon.
Wow.
Yeah. So we do have the mechanism to do that. Some things do require legislative change, but we've got a mechanism to do that.
Is there anything specific about civics education, in particular Māori civics education, that came out of the recommendations?
Do we have that? I mean, I know we've pushed civics education every single time. I mean, it is a problem. We don't need legislative change. We just need to get that in the curriculum and get it moving. That's really the key thing, isn't it?
It's a conversation between the Commission and education.
And
So
we tried that.
patient,
Robert Team is actually.
Do you know what civics? See, that's a really good question, because what the hell's civics education? We don't understand. Oh, sorry.
But we'll be sharing it on the hub, Bub,
Yeah.
so everybody
No one
can
teaches
learn.
us.
Civics. I'm
Yeah,
thinking
no
of,
one teaches
like,
us
scissors
how.
cutting up
Yeah.
paper or something.
No one teaches us. Who does? Someone else want to answer that? Do you?
No one teaches us.
Yeah, no one teaches
Yeah,
us
no one civics
about the
education.
structure
Yeah.
of how the country runs from the government structural things. So we don't say to our kids, that, this is how the government. We don't have special. You know how we have English and maths and science and
Compulsory
Māori and those
subjects, yeah.
compulsory subjects. Civics, that is teaching our children how the country is run, is not part of that. So you can go through the whole education system here and no one teaches you how the government actually runs. How many seats there are in Parliament, how decisions are made, what the role is of the Governor-General. You know, who's the Governor-General, you know? The representative of the Queen in this country.
Even like last election I was doing a radio series and an education series and the journey of your vote.
Where
You
did it
know,
go?
what happens to your vote? Yeah, so the journey of your vote.
Yeah.
How do you become, how do you get that vote and enroll and all that? And then when you vote, what happens to that vote? And so that's...
So that no one teaches us that in this country. Neither do we teach New Zealand history.
You get algebra though.
Yeah, algebra, you know.
Yeah,
You do,
duh,
but, no
yeah.
one teaches it's
Yeah.
not compulsory to do New Zealand history. It's not compulsory to do civics. Some countries, you have to do those.
America,
You have to understand.
Well, that's
America, I
what I've
think
never
civics
even
is
heard the word
compulsory,
civics
and their
before
history,
because I came into
their
it.
colonial history is compulsory. Not their their real history, but their colonial history.
The fact that you're here today, Piripi, is an example that at least you're engaging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Figuring it out.
yeah,
I'm trying.
and people like me who vlog information to a community, I want to be able to get information and make information accessible to the people in this community, to my small community, and I belong to other communities, and it's like a korowai type system, so that you are going to be empowered by the information that's available from hui's like this.
I spoke to the Ministry of Education just a day or two ago, actually. And one of the things that they're working on is a school leavers kit that deals with things like financial literacy, like, how to do a bank account and, make sure that you're doing your budgeting properly, but also about the importance of voting and how you actually go about doing that and what two votes mean, party vote versus the electorate votes, just the real basic things around how to do some of that stuff more effectively. So they are doing some work in that area. Yeah.
The other thing, I had a corridor with regards to being on the Māori roll and being on the general roll, and in particular with regards to the like the Māori ward stuff. Once you're on the Māori roll, then you have to be on the Māori ward, in the local body elections as well, which actually kind of, for me, being a strategic voter, actually lessens my choices. And so for me that was a worry when I was thinking about moving from the general role onto the Māori role, was actually it wasn't just about the central government, but it was actually also about those local body elections as well, and the effect that being on the Māori roll would have if Māori wards were brought in. And so education with regards to that, I think, is also important, because there is that flow-on effect. Again, 5 years, that's it. You make that choice and you're there for 5 years. People come and go. I'm a strategic voter. People who you want to vote for come and go. Some of them leave, so that they're going to leave just before the next election.
You
so
asked about civics, and that's kind of it. So if someone said to you, how you're not registered. Sorry if I'm holding.
No, don't apologise.
Okay. So at the moment there are, correct me if I'm wrong, 7 Māori seats. So if all of the Māori people in this room, in this community, and in this town, and in this whole country registered tomorrow as voters on the Māori roll, how many seats would be in the Māori electorates? 14 seats.
Double.
We double.
14.
I thought it was.
If everyone of Maori descent
If everyone
of Maori descent went on the Maori roll,
then we would go from 7 seats to 14, which means we could control effectively who the next government is always going to be in the MMP system. Now, we went out and told every Māori that of Māori descent, no matter how you relate, if we all strategically switched to the Māori roll, registered, and switched to the Māori roll, the Māori community of this country would be what's called the kingmakers. That is, in every election, after the votes, they'd have to come and see if we all agreed to the same party, because of course we're all different, but if we did agree, say, to party X, then actually every government would have to come to the Māori population and say, what do you want to support us? Now that means under the MMP system, the mixed, it's mixed member proportional, the way it's running, if we engaged ourselves really cleverly, we would actually be really important in every election, and every political party would be coming to the Māori community and saying, what do you want? And promising it to us. I think, is that an unreasonable, sorry, it's not your job to do, is that an unreasonable scenario? We'd be in control, and no one has kind of got there. So I say to non-registered voters, your vote could actually end up being the most important vote in the country. Which is why Winston Peters and some other people want the Māori seats removed. If we actually got ourselves together
understood that recipe, we would be the controllers
Yeah.
of who is most likely to be in power. That's just my secret hope that we could get there. It's my secret strategic hope, and if we did, then every Pākehā parliamentarian would either want to get rid of the Māori seats or suck up to the Māori seats.
Or do other things like stop having civics education.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm very mindful of, you have a whole lot of people thinking, hey, civics education is a great thing, but then you have another crowd like, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
We'll just give them 2 cents. And
You
so
don't wanna
if you look
learn
at that, why would they want that? Well, because the political status quo actually suits them as well. So for me, I'm very mindful of that, of that kind of attitude, about not so they don't want you to know, basically, because it suits.
Yeah.
I
Well,
feel
we don't
their
know.
political agenda to
And
know
from-
how this place actually runs.
And information is power, Barb. When you know, the more you know, the more opportunities that you'll be exposed to. So the simple fact that you asked the question, what does that mean, has opened up this dialogue, and will actually educate other people when they see it, when they see this vlog. So well done.
Well, it's just, I felt a bit dumb as well saying civics and stuff.
You're
It's
not.
just how the government works, how the country works.
Have you ever signed a petition? You see one going round?
Yeah, I've signed a few petitions. No,
Yeah, and if they're an official petitions, they'll go through and check. If you're not on the roll, they put a line through you.
Really? I didn't realise that a petition, you have to be on the roll. Well, there I am learning something.
And that's part of our process, that's the, that's in
So is that like,
I'm on the
so
roll,
with
so
the
my
band
name
1080
counts.
so, so if you're not enrolled and say you've signed up to that band 1080, then you can't. You'll never just get the line.
Yeah.
The opportunities are there, but the possibilities, that's the problem. The possibilities.
You don't ever think that you're dumb, Bub, because you're sitting in a room with some smart people. Okay, so that makes you a smart person as well. The fact that you're here and you'll be making a decision, future decisions that will affect the way how you will maybe talk to your nieces and nephews, talk to your own children one day. This is good. This is what we want.
This is democracy.
This is it. This is it. Talking. People talking.
Everyone's
Learning from each other, Barb. I'm learning from you, you're learning from me.
This is
Hey,
democracy.
this is it.
Tiano's got a point. Some people have something to gain by us not knowing.
That's why
Everything remains the same if we are less informed. I'm not saying there is deliberate for everyone like that, but for some people it's better we don't understand the full potential we have.
I think in Highbury there's a tendency to be a bit of an ostrich, okay? So, or complacent. So what we need to do is we need to start talking to each other. Start doing these types of things. Start empowering people to get access to information to make a decision. So I think that this is great, and this is just a start. And there's lots of